There's something primal about camping, being alone in the wild, surrounded by trees, the crackling fire, the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. But what happens when that darkness holds something more sinister? When the trees whisper secrets and the safety of your tent feels like a fragile shield against the unknown? Tonight, we take you deep into the heart of terror with 3 true camping horror stories that will chill you to the bone. In our first story, a carefree night at Wisconsin's Devil's Lake turns into a desperate search for a missing friend, whose only trace is a footprint disappearing into the water. Then we'll travel to Yosemite, where a couple is stalked by an unseen presence whispering from the shadows of the towering pines. And finally, we head to the eerie Pine Barrens of New Jersey, where a ghostly hitchhiker leaves behind nothing but footprints and fear. These are the tales that will haunt your dreams and make you think twice before pitching your tent in the great outdoors. Prepare yourself. You may never look at camping the same way again. It was the summer of 2016 when 2 college friends, Emily and Sarah, decided to go camping at Devil's Lake in Wisconsin. The lake, known for its scenic beauty and steep cliffs, had long been a favorite spot for adventurers. But beneath its calm surface, the lake held secrets, dark ones, whispered by locals for over a century. Emily and Sarah set up their camp in a remote area, far from the main campground. They craved solitude and adventure, not the typical hum of crowded family campsites. Their tent was nestled between towering pines, with the lake's still waters only a few feet away. As the sun dipped behind the cliffs, casting long shadows across the campsite, the air became cooler, more still. The beauty of the wilderness began to morph into something more eerie. As night fell, an unnatural quietness settled in. The usual nighttime symphony of insects and rustling leaves seemed to vanish, replaced by an oppressive silence. Emily noticed at first the kind of silence that makes you feel watched. She and Sarah sat around the fire, the crackling flames providing a fragile sense of security in the growing darkness. Then came the breeze, a sudden frigid gust that seemed to come from nowhere, sending a chill down Emily's spine. "Is it supposed to be this cold?" Sarah asked, pulling her hoodie tighter. Emily shook her head. It was the middle of summer, yet the temperature had plummeted, the fire offering little warmth against the unnatural chill. Suddenly there was a sound. At first it was faint, like twigs snapping in the distance. They brushed it off, assuming it was an animal wandering nearby. But then the noise grew louder. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy. Not the erratic scurry of wildlife, the kind of steps you know belong to something or someone large. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide as she scanned the woods. Emily nodded, her heartbeat quickening. They both grabbed their flashlights, shining them into the darkness. The beams of light cut through the trees but revealed nothing. The footsteps stopped, and the silence returned. But something wasn't right. The air felt thick with unease, as if the forest itself was watching them. Sarah stood up abruptly. "I'm just going to wash my hands by the lake," she said, her voice shaky. Emily didn't respond, too focused on listening for any further movement in the shadows. Minutes passed. Then more. Emily glanced toward the lake. The light from Sarah's flashlight should have been visible, but there was only darkness. Emily called out. No answer. She called again, louder this time. Silence. Feeling a growing sense of dread, Emily grabbed her own flashlight and rushed down to the water's edge. The lake was unnervingly still, its surface like a mirror reflecting the starry sky. But Sarah wasn't there. Emily's eyes darted across the shore, and that's when she saw Sarah's flashlight, lying on the ground, its beam flickering weakly. Beside it, in the wet sand, was a single footprint. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The footprint led directly into the water, but there were no others. It was as if Sarah had taken one step into the lake and vanished. Panic surged through her. She shined her light over the lake, searching for any sign of movement, but the water remained still, unnaturally calm. A deep, instinctual fear took hold of her, the kind that screamed run. Emily's mind raced as she stood frozen, staring at the dark, empty water. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled, and she had the distinct feeling that she wasn't alone. From the woods behind her, a sound soft, almost imperceptible, like a whisper carried on the wind, but the words weren't clear, just a hushed, eerie murmur. Without a second thought, Emily turned and bolted back to the campsite, her flashlight trembling in her hand. She didn't stop until she was safely by the fire, its faint glow doing little to calm her. But one thing was certain: she wasn't spending another moment by that lake. To this day, no one knows what happened to Sarah, but those who camp near Devil's Lake often report strange noises at night, whispers that seem to rise from the water, and the feeling of being watched from the woods. Some say if you walk too close to the lake after dark, you might find a single footprint leading into the water. In 2008, Mark and his girlfriend, Lisa, embarked on a much-anticipated camping trip to Yosemite National Park. The couple was excited to escape the hustle of everyday life and immerse themselves in the untamed beauty of the wilderness. They chose a remote campsite far from the busy campgrounds, craving solitude and a deeper connection with nature. The towering sequoias and the serene atmosphere of Yosemite felt like a perfect sanctuary. By the second night, they had already hiked miles through the stunning scenery and were exhausted, ready to settle into their tent. The night was eerily quiet. Only the distant murmur of a stream broke the silence. They zipped up their tent and settled into their sleeping bags, lulled by the gentle rustle of leaves in the cool night breeze. But as they began to drift off to sleep, a faint rustling outside their tent broke the tranquility. Mark's eyes snapped open. He strained to listen, but the sound was subtle, almost like something or someone was moving quietly around their campsite. He brushed it off, thinking it must be a deer or a raccoon, common in the area. However, the noise continued, growing louder with each passing minute. Lisa whispered, "I don't think that's an animal." Her voice trembled, her unease contagious. Mark tried to reassure her, but deep down he felt it too, that primal, unsettling feeling of being watched. Then, from somewhere beyond the trees came the faintest sound. It wasn't an animal's call or the rustling of branches. It was a whisper, a low, guttural murmur that made the hair on the back of Mark's neck stand on end. The words were unintelligible, but the tone sent a cold shiver through him. Mark grabbed his flashlight, his heart pounding, and unzipped the tent with trembling hands. He shined the light into the surrounding woods, sweeping the beam across the towering trees. Nothing. Just the vast darkness swallowing the forest. He turned off the light, but the whispers persisted. This time they were closer. Mark froze, listening in terror as the whispers seemed to surround the campsite, circling them like a predator stalking its prey. Suddenly they heard its footsteps, slow, deliberate, and heavy, as though someone was walking just outside their tent. Lisa gripped Mark's arm, her breath quickening. They listened in horror as the footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped, right next to the tent. Then, the scratching began. A slow, deliberate clawing at the side of the tent, like nails dragging across the fabric. Lisa screamed, and Mark scrambled out of the tent, his flashlight flickering as he waved it wildly into the darkness. Once again, there was nothing, no animal, no person, just the oppressive silence of the woods. Shaken and terrified, they quickly packed up their gear, tossing it haphazardly into their car. As they sped down the winding roads out of Yosemite, the sense of being watched never left them. Lisa turned to Mark, her voice barely a whisper. We weren't alone. To this day, Mark is convinced that something more than just the wilderness was watching them that night, a presence unseen but all too real, lurking just beyond the trees. The Pine Barrens of New Jersey have long been cloaked in a shroud of mystery and eerie legends. Among these, the tale of the phantom hitchhiker stands out as one of the most chilling. In 1997, a group of high school friends, eager for a weekend of camping and ghost stories, ventured into a remote part of this dense, foreboding forest. The fall air was crisp, and the landscape was painted in shades of orange and brown. As the friends set up their camp, the atmosphere was ripe for storytelling. With the crackling campfire providing the only warmth against the encroaching cold, they shared urban legends, including the spine-tingling tale of the phantom hitchhiker, a spectral figure said to appear on the side of the road at night, asking for a ride. Witnesses claimed that he would vanish without a trace once inside the car, leaving behind only an unsettling sense of dread. As the evening wore on, the friends settled into their tents, the fire's glow casting eerie shadows among the trees. Around 3 a.m., Chris, one of the friends, woke up with an urgent need to use the bathroom. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside, the darkness swallowing him almost immediately. The only sounds were the rustling leaves and the distant call of an owl. As Chris walked a few feet away from the tent, he noticed a figure standing at the edge of the woods, just beyond the light cast by their campfire. The man appeared to be in his late 20s, dressed in a flannel shirt and jeans. He seemed disoriented, his posture unnaturally still. Chris called out, but the man didn't respond. Instead, he just stared blankly into the darkness, his eyes reflecting the weak beam of Chris's flashlight. Unease gripped Chris. He quickly walked back to the tent, shaking his friends awake. When they emerged, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, the man was nowhere to be seen. They searched the perimeter of the campsite but found no trace of him. The night passed in a tense silence, the friends unable to shake the feeling that they were being watched. When morning light finally broke through the trees, they were eager to leave. However, their departure was delayed when they discovered something disturbing. Near their campsite, in the dirt, were footprints, bare footprints, leading from the edge of the woods to their tent. The tracks ended abruptly at the tent, with no footprints leading away. The friends were unnerved and packed up quickly, their minds racing with the night's events. As they drove away, they discussed the strange encounter, trying to make sense of what they had seen. Later, they learned that the area they had camped in was near a road where, years before, a young man had tragically died in a car accident after being struck by a vehicle. Locals believed that his spirit was now forever bound to the woods, wandering in search of a way home. The stories didn't end there. Over the years, other campers and locals reported similar encounters, strange figures appearing at the edge of the woods, disembodied footsteps in the night, and unsettling whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Some claimed they had seen the phantom hitchhiker, only to have him vanish without a trace. Others spoke of feeling an oppressive presence, as though the forest itself was alive and watching. To this day, the Pine Barrens remain a place of mystery and fear. Those who venture into its depths at night often find themselves uneasy, the memory of the phantom hitchhiker lingering like a ghostly warning. The whispers of the woods seem to carry an echo of the young man's tragic fate, a chilling reminder that some spirits are doomed to wander, eternally searching for a place to call home. These chilling stories are a reminder that the wilderness can be as mysterious as it is beautiful. Whether it's the unexplained disappearance at Devil's Lake, the eerie presence in Yosemite, or the phantom in the Pine Barrens, these true accounts show that sometimes the scariest things aren't the ones we can see, but the ones we can't. So next time you're out in the wilderness, keep your eyes and ears open. You never know what might be watching. If you want to see more horror stories, please like the video, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us, thank you, and see you in the next videos.